It's so amazing how the humble green pea can help transform a plain meal into something that looks and tastes amazing. Peas are a common addition to any meal, but today I'll show you how with just a little extra effort and a few simple ingredients, they can give your plate a wow factor. In this video today, we're going to take these peas and turn them into this puree. Later in the video, we'll use the pea puree to replate this basic meal in 3 interesting and eye-catching ways. There's nothing wrong with this meal just as it is, but I think we can take it up a notch. So let's get straight into making this beautiful green pea puree, and there's more to it than just blitzing up some boiled green peas. I have some frozen peas, an onion, some garlic, fresh thyme, salt and pepper, and some fresh cream. First I'm going to finely slice the onion and then sweet it in a little oil and butter. Don't rush this step. It really is best to do it low and slow. Mine has taken about 6 minutes to reach this stage. While this is frying, you can crush some garlic and add that to the pan. I'll also add the thyme. I'm picking off the leaves because I don't want stalky bits in my puree. We'll let this simmer for a few minutes to let the flavours develop further. Now it's time to add in the peas. It's fine to use frozen peas. Cook them until they're thawed before adding the cream. If you're using fresh or canned peas, you can go ahead and add the cream straight away. Add a good dollop and let it simmer for another few minutes to allow it to reduce and thicken slightly. Be careful not to cook the peas for too long because they'll turn into an olive green colour and could look a bit dead on the plate. Ideally, we want the pea puree to be a bright green, full of life, and make the plate look vibrant. This is ready now, so I'll take it off the heat and get out my mini blender. The idea of a puree isn't to eat it by the spoonful like you would mashed potato. This puree is really more like a garnish that complements the other components of the meal. It's intended to add to the looks and taste of the meal, and so usually you would scoop up a little puree with a forkful of the meal. Yum! The thickness and smoothness of a puree are determined by the cooking process. You can adjust the thickness of the puree by how long you reduce the cream for, or by adding more cream to thin it down. The smoothness of the puree will be determined by the kind of blender you use and the amount of time you blend the puree for. If you want to go for an ultra smooth puree, you can strain it. I'll be using both a thicker, coarser puree and an ultra smooth puree for the plating ideas I want to show. Let's get this into a small squeezy bottle, ready for one of the ideas. Plating is the fun part, so let's do that now. Obviously, you can switch any or all of these out, but these are the basic ingredients that we have to work with. Our pea puree, boiled potatoes and pan-fried salmon, and over here some roasted cherry tomatoes to give a nice pop of red. I've also got some microgreens to garnish with. I've been growing these for a few weeks and they're ready to use, so I'm excited to see how they go. This beautiful green puree will work on both a dark or a lighter coloured plate. Today, to keep things simple, we'll use a black plate for each idea. Let's get on to idea number 1. For this one, we'll spoon some of the thicker, chunkier puree onto the plate and push it out using a circular motion with the back of a spoon. I like the slightly coarser puree for this, as it's still thick enough to hold a bit of a mound. Actually, I haven't got this right in the middle of the plate, and I want to fix it now before it's too late. The round bed of puree on the round plate will look much more pleasing to the eye if it's right in the centre. Now I'll add these steamed potatoes in the centre. I'll cut them a little smaller so they create a bed to put the salmon onto. This helps to create height, which always adds to the presentation. Having a base will also stop the oiliness from the fish pooling on the plate. I'll also add a few of these delicious roasted cherry tomatoes for a little bit of extra colour. You could leave this just like this, but since I have these microgreens, I'm going to add a little pile to the top, and maybe even a couple of strays on the side. So here's our homemade meal with peas, potatoes and salmon transformed. It looks pretty good, doesn't it? I'm happy with that. Let's get on with idea number 2. For our second idea, I'm going to use empty space to create balance on the plate. I've got the same ingredients, just portioned differently. This time I'm going to start by placing the potatoes in a slightly arced shape on the plate. Traditionally, you'd plate the food in the centre of the plate, but there's no rules. By creating empty space on the plate, you can make it interesting and appealing and have some fun. I'm squashing these potatoes a little. It makes them a sturdier base and adds a bit of dimension. Then we'll add the pieces of salmon. Again, it works well to use the potato to create a little height by leaning the salmon up against it. Then we can add our pea puree. I've got the strained version here in my little squeezy bottle so that I can do this easily and perfectly. Just dotting it around here and there to fill in the gaps. It's well worth investing in a squeezy bottle. I couldn't imagine doing this with a spoon. I think it adds to the presentation to have varying sized dots too, which is very easy to do when you have full control of the flow of the puree. And then for colour, I'll add the roasted cherry tomatoes. Plating in odd numbers always adds to the presentation because it's more pleasing to the eye. So I'm using 5 on this plate. It also helps to complete the arc shape I'm going for. Here's our cute little microgreens to scatter around and finish this off. I love how this has turned out. It looks stunning against the dark plate and the empty space looks balanced. Imagine serving this to your family. And on to our last plating idea. This one's a bit of an experiment, so let's give it a go. It's called the splat, and I'm going to do just that. Oops, that's not quite splatty enough. I was trying not to make a big mess. I'm going to do that again. Here's a little glimpse of behind the scenes of making a video. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. That's so much better. Doesn't it give such a cool effect on the plate? Now for the potatoes. Maybe we should just put them here on the side. I don't want to cover the amazing looking splat lines, so I'll keep to this side. Then I'll pop the salmon on top of the potatoes. For this one, I think I'll put the skin side down. I'll carefully add some cherry tomatoes on each side, trying not to let them drip en route. And lastly, I'll add some of the microgreens. I love how they finish off a plate. You could add any chopped herbs or small green leaves here if you don't have microgreens available, although they are quite fun to grow. There's nothing wrong with a simple meal, but if you want to be fancy, you can often take those same simple ingredients and plate your meal slightly differently to give it a wow factor. Don't forget, there are many other vegetables you can use to get other vibrant puree colours. 2 that immediately come to mind are carrots for a nice deep orange, or even beetroot for a vibrant pinky red colour. Actually, have you seen my video on making a beetroot soup amuse-bouche? You could take that soup and use it as a garnish too. The options are endless. Happy pureeing!